But I will say that the inventor, Dr. Kary Mullis, who's died now, but he won a Nobel Prize for the creation of this polymerase chain reaction, or PCR test, always said very early on when he saw it being misused, he said, hey, you shouldn't be using this test to diagnose viral infections. People said, oh, well, why not? And he said, well, the technique is so powerful. It's an amplification technique. It magnifies things, really. It's like a magnifying glass. And it can magnify up to 1 trillion-fold. Basically, every time you hear this phrase cycle and cycle threshold, but basically every time the chemical reaction goes through a single cycle, it roughly doubles the amount that was in the test tube. And if you go 40 times, it's 2 to the power of 40, which is 1 trillion. So if there was one fragment of a piece of viral RNA converted to DNA and then multiplied, you could get a positive test. Well, folks, if you've got like one little fragment of a virus, and you imagine that on your hand, I mean, it's far too small, right? That isn't going to make you ill. So being positive does not mean you're infected clinically, right? So that's the problem. So that's the problem with it. There's loads of other problems with it, but it's just fundamentally not suitable as a diagnostic technique because there's no minimum level that you have to be above before we'll say you're sick. That's the problem. People they say, oh no, that can't be right, Dr. Eden. It is right. It's not got a calibration in it. Any positive signal up to, till you've finished as many cycles of amplification as your technique allows you. If it is positive at the end, they've said, oh, you've got COVID-19. It's bullshit, absolute bullshit. But that technique, once you know about that, and you know things like, if I do the test slightly badly, I can make it positive much more often. Seriously, if you were using a technique forensically, you would probably try and manipulate it until it only goes positive when you're really sure it's detecting what it is you're looking for. But I'm afraid you definitely can bend it. And if you want to change the heating time and the sort of whatever it's called, the melting time and the annealing time, you can play with this technique and you can make the operational false positive rate higher or lower if you want. And I think that's been used around the world, and I think that's mostly the cause of these so-called waves. I'm not even sure they're real. But it's worked quite well. It's literally, they've gone lockdown, everybody's locked down, cases have gone up and down. Remember, there are scores of other respiratory viruses that they've carried on making people ill, some have died. That's not gone away. We don't normally measure the kind of respiratory virus you've got. We take care of you symptomatically if you need it. It's only recently that we've started using all these sciencey things. But so that's the central practical deceit, and the psychological deceit was saying, even though you look quite well, you could be giving this disease to somebody, so stay away. That's not true.